The first thing Marcus felt was pain, sharp, throbbing pain that radiated from his left side. The second thing he noticed was the gentle whirring of medical equipment, a symphony of beeps and hums that seemed to match the rhythm of his heartbeat. When he finally managed to open his eyes, the harsh fluorescent lights made him wince. "Take it easy," came a soft, melodious voice. "You've been through quite an ordeal." Through his blurred vision, he made out a figure in white approaching his bed. As his eyes adjusted, he found himself looking at the most striking woman he'd ever seen. Her features were perfectly symmetrical, almost too perfect. Dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, revealing high cheekbones and eyes that seemed to shift between azure and silver, depending on how the light hit them. "I'm Nurse Eden," she said, checking his vitals with practiced efficiency. "You're at Metropolitan General. Do you remember what happened?" Marcus tried to piece together his memories. The quantum drive testing facility, the containment breach, the explosion. "The lab," he managed to croak out. "There was an accident." Eden nodded, adjusting his foredrip. 3 days ago. You're lucky to be alive. The quantum radiation could have been fatal, but your body seems to be responding well to the treatment." Her hand brushed against his arm as she worked, and he noticed it was unusually warm, almost charged with energy. Over the next few days, Eden was a constant presence. She was always there during her shifts, attending to his needs with a level of care that seemed to go beyond professional duty. Marcus found himself looking forward to her visits, studying the graceful way she moved and the subtle metallic sheen that sometimes appeared in her eyes when she smiled. It was during one of their late-night conversations that he first noticed something different about her. She was changing his bandages when the lights flickered, just for a moment, and in that brief instant, he could have sworn he saw patterns of light moving beneath her skin, like circuits pulsing with energy. Eden must have noticed his startled expression because she quickly stepped back, making an excuse about checking on another patient. But not before Marcus caught a glimpse of genuine concern, or was it fear, in those remarkable eyes. That night, unable to sleep, Marcus replayed every interaction with Eden in his mind. The way she never seemed to tire during long shifts. How she could recite his vital signs without looking at the monitors. The slight humming sound he sometimes heard when she was near. He'd worked with enough advanced technology at the quantum lab to recognize artificial enhancement when he saw it. But rather than feeling afraid or repulsed, he found himself even more intrigued. There was something about Eden that went beyond her physical appearance or whatever technological components she might possess. She showed genuine compassion, quick wit, and an understanding of human nature that no purely artificial being could replicate. As he drifted off to sleep, his dreams were filled with images of circuits intertwining with flesh, and eyes that shimmered like starlight. 2 weeks into his recovery, Marcus was strong enough to take short walks around the hospital floor. Eden would accompany him, her hand steady on his arm as they made slow circuits past the nurse's station and through the quiet corridors. It was during one of these walks that everything changed. They had ventured into a seldom-used solarium, its walls made of smart glass that adjusted to the perfect opacity to let in the sunset without glare. As they stood watching the sky turn purple and gold, Eden's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on his arm. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice carrying an undertone he'd never heard before, something that sounded almost like electrical interference. I'm not exactly what you think I am." Marcus turned to face her, noting how the dying sunlight seemed to make her skin translucent, revealing what he had suspected, a network of fine, luminescent lines just beneath the surface. "You're a hybrid," he said softly, "human and synthetic." Eden's eyes widened, those silver flecks in her irises becoming more pronounced. "How long have you known?" "I've had my suspicions. I work with experimental technology, or at least I did before the accident. I know the signs." He reached out and took her hand, running his thumb over her palm where the faintest trace of circuitry was visible. "Why are you telling me this now?" She withdrew her hand, wrapping her arms around herself in a surprisingly human gesture of vulnerability. "Because I've never felt this way about a patient before, about anyone, And I needed you to know the truth before. She trailed off, turning back to the window. Before what? Before I let myself feel more than I already do. Her voice was barely a whisper. I was part of an experimental program. They wanted to create medical professionals who could combine human empathy with enhanced capabilities. But they didn't expect us to develop real emotions, real attachments. They thought the synthetic components would prevent that. Marcus stepped closer, ignoring the twinge of pain in his side. But they were wrong? Eden's laugh was soft and bitter. They were wrong about so many things. We feel everything. Sometimes I think we feel more deeply than pure humans because every emotion gets processed by both our organic and synthetic components. It's like experiencing everything in stereo. The confession hung between them in the darkening room. Marcus found himself moving closer, drawn by something he couldn't explain. A pull that felt both biological and electromagnetic, as if their very atoms were seeking alignment. Eden, he said, reaching for her hand again. This time, she didn't pull away. I don't care what you're made of. I care about who you are. She turned to face him, and in the dim light, her eyes were glowing softly. You don't understand. There are protocols, rules. I'm not supposed to. But whatever she was about to say was lost as the moment between them crystallized into something electric and inevitable. Marcus leaned in, and Eden's synthetic components registered his elevated heart rate, increased body temperature, and the dilation of his pupils. Her human half registered only the overwhelming desire to close the distance between them. Their first kiss felt like completing a circuit. The weeks that followed were a dance of professional boundaries and growing attraction. During the day, Eden maintained her role as his nurse, but there was an undercurrent of electricity in every touch, every shared glance. At night, when the hospital quieted, she would sometimes visit him during her breaks, and they would talk for hours. Marcus learned that Eden's human components came from a donor who had been brain-dead after an accident. A young woman who had signed up for an experimental program to allow her body to be used for medical advancement. The synthetic elements had been integrated at the cellular level, creating a true hybrid being rather than just a human with technological enhancements. I have her memories sometimes, Eden confessed one night, sitting in the chair beside his bed. They come to me in dreams, fragments of a life I never lived. But my consciousness, my personality, that's all new. A combination of organic neural patterns and quantum computing. Marcus reached out to trace the subtle patterns that appeared on her skin when she was emotional. Do you ever regret what you are? I used to, she said, her skin shimming under his touch. But then I realized that being different doesn't make me less real. My feelings aren't diminished because part of me is synthetic. If anything, they're enhanced. I process emotions through multiple systems simultaneously, organic and digital. When I feel something, I feel it completely. The air between them grew charged, literally and figuratively. Eden's synthetic components were responding to their proximity, creating a low-level electromagnetic field that made the hair on Marcus's arms stand up. And what are you feeling right now? He asked, his voice low. Instead of answering, Eden leaned forward and kissed him. Unlike their first kiss in the solarium, this one was deeper, more urgent. Marcus could feel a slight tingling where their lips met, like static electricity but warmer, more intimate. When they finally pulled apart, Eden's eyes were glowing brightly enough to cast shadows on the wall. I shouldn't be doing this, she whispered, but her hand was already moving to the nape of his neck, fingers trailing fire across his skin. Why not? Because you're my patient. Because I'm not fully human. Because Marcus silenced her protests with another kiss. I don't want fully human. I want you. The monitors beside his bed began to beep more rapidly as their embrace intensified. Eden pulled back with a small laugh. Your heart rate is elevated. As your nurse, I should be concerned. As my nurse, what's your professional opinion? She pretended to consider it, her synthetic systems running a quick diagnostic of his vital signs. Well, your recovery is progressing well. Physical activity would actually be beneficial at this stage, as long as it's carefully monitored. The implications of her words hung in the air between them. Marcus reached up to pull the pins from her hair, watching as it fell around her shoulders in waves that seemed to capture and reflect the dim light of the room. "I trust my nurse's judgment," he said softly. Eden's response was to dim the lights with a thought, her synthetic components interfacing seamlessly with the hospital's systems. In the darkness, the patterns beneath her skin glowed like constellations. Their relationship evolved in secret, hidden in the quiet hours between midnight and dawn. Eden's synthetic components allowed her to function without sleep, and she spent many nights in Marcus's room, their conversations ranging from quantum physics to philosophy, punctuated by increasingly passionate encounters. Marcus discovered that loving a hybrid was an experience that defied conventional description. Eden's touches could generate small electrical impulses that sent pleasure coursing through his nervous system. Her synthetic components allowed her to regulate her body temperature and adjust her biological responses to perfectly complement his own. But it was more than just the physical aspects. Eden's dual nature gave her a unique perspective on existence that fascinated Marcus. She could process information both emotionally and logically simultaneously, arriving at insights that were both deeply felt and precisely calculated. "I can measure the exact changes in your body when you look at me," she told him one night as they lay together in his hospital bed, her head resting on his chest. "Your pupil dilation, heart rate, hormone levels, it's all data that my systems process automatically. But at the same time, I feel this warmth, this emotional response that can't be quantified. It's like experiencing love in two different languages at once." Marcus ran his fingers along her spine, watching as patterns of light followed his touch. "Does it ever feel overwhelming? Processing everything on multiple levels like that?" Eden propped herself up on one elbow, her hair falling around them like a curtain that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. "Only when I'm with you. You make both my systems run at maximum capacity." She smiled, and the monitors beside the bed flickered in response to her heightened emotional state. Their moments together were stolen and precious, hidden from the rest of the hospital staff and the world at large. During the day, Eden maintained her professional demeanor, but Marcus could see the subtle signs of their connection. The way the lights would dim slightly when she entered his room, the almost imperceptible hum of her systems responding to his presence. But they both knew their time together was limited. Marcus's recovery was progressing rapidly, partly due to Eden's advanced medical capabilities. Soon, he would be discharged, and their carefully constructed bubble of secret meetings and midnight conversations would burst. "What happens when I leave?" he asked one night, voicing the fear they'd both been avoiding. Eden was silent for a long moment, her systems processing multiple scenarios simultaneously. "I don't know," she finally admitted. "I've never allowed myself to get this close to anyone before. My programming includes protocols about maintaining professional boundaries, but my human side..." She trailed off, and Marcus watched as waves of light moved beneath her skin, reflecting her emotional turmoil. "We'll figure it out," he promised, pulling her closer. "I'm not willing to let this end when I walk out of here." Eden's response was to kiss him with an intensity that made the medical equipment around them surge with power momentarily. Their passion that night was tinged with desperation, both of them aware that their time in this protected space was running out. The day of Marcus's discharge arrived with a sense of both ending and beginning. As Eden helped him gather his belongings, their touches lingered longer than necessary, each contact carrying the weight of unspoken words. "Meet me tonight," Marcus whispered as she wheeled him toward the hospital exit, following discharge protocol despite his insistence that he could walk. "There's a quantum physics symposium at the university. I have 2 tickets." Eden's step faltered slightly, causing a brief fluctuation in the overhead lights. "Marcus, I can't just dash." "You can," he interrupted. "Your shift ends at 8. The symposium starts at 9. No one would question a medical professional attending a scientific lecture." She was quiet as they reached the hospital entrance, her systems running through calculations and possibilities. Finally, she spoke softly. "The blue dress, the one you said you imagined me in. I still have it." It was as close to a yes as she could give while still in her professional role. Marcus smiled, understanding both what she said and what she couldn't say. That night, when Eden walked into the university auditorium, she took Marcus's breath away. The blue dress seemed to shift and shimmer with her movements, either from the fabric itself or the patterns of light beneath her skin. It was impossible to tell. She had let her hair down, and in the dim lighting, the synthetic elements in her makeup caught the light like trapped stars. The symposium's topic, the integration of organic and synthetic systems, seemed chosen specifically for them. As they listened to discussions about the future of human-machine integration, Marcus's hand found Eden's in the darkness. He could feel the slight electrical charge between them, a physical manifestation of their connection. After the lecture, they walked through the university gardens, where quantum-powered lights created pools of soft illumination. Eden's synthetic components responded to the technology around them, making her seem to glow from within. "I've made a decision," she said, stopping beside a fountain whose water flowed in impossible patterns. "I'm leaving the hospital program." Marcus turned to face her, surprised. "What? Why?" "Because I want more than stolen moments and secret meetings." The program was designed to create medical professionals who could combine human empathy with enhanced capabilities. But they never considered that we might develop beyond our programming, might want things they hadn't planned for. She took both his hands in hers, and he could feel the pulse of energy between them. "I want a life, Marcus, a real life with all the complexity and messiness that comes with it. And I want it with you." The implications of her words hung in the air between them. Leaving the program meant stepping into unknown territory. No hybrid had ever chosen to live independently before. "Are you sure? The risks dash." "I've calculated all the risks," she interrupted with a small smile. "Both my systems agree you're worth it." Marcus pulled her close, feeling the familiar tingle of her synthetic components responding to his proximity. "We'll figure it out together," he promised. "After all, I'm a quantum physicist who fell in love with a hybrid nurse. I'd say we're pretty good at defying expectations." Eden laughed, and the garden lights pulsed in response to her joy. As they kissed, Marcus could feel both the warmth of her human side and the electric charge of her synthetic components. The perfect integration of two worlds, just like their love. Above them, the stars shone down on a world where the lines between human and machine were becoming increasingly blurred, and love was proving to be the most powerful force for integration of all.